The glass room hummed as the memo hit every phone, and a hush cut the air. Maya Collins said, "Read it again," while her pulse drummed like a trapped moth. Lydia Brooks said, "Unauthorized data. Changes were traced to one account." The projector threw cold light as names burned on the slide. "Ethan Ward," said Breathe. "This is a setup," and his voice hid under the buzz of vents. Maya felt the floor tilt, yet she anchored to breath and posture. Lydia Brooks said, "This violates protocol and trust," and the word trust stung like smoke. Maya Collins said, "I corrected an error flagged by audit, not concealed it." The room watched, as if a verdict might spray from the ceiling. Ethan Ward said, "Facts first, noise later," and his eyes steadied her spine. Maya Collins said, "Open the logs, and we will see cause, not rumor." The slide waited, blue and merciless, as the door latch clicked like a gavel. The corridor felt like an aquarium with everyone peering in. Maya Collins said, "I will not apologize for fixing a broken field," and the words tasted like iron. She counted steps to slow the heat in her chest. Ethan Ward said, "We pull logs, we timestamps, we win," and his cadence was crisp and spare. A poster about integrity stared back with plastic cheer. Maya Collins said, "They want me to break before noon," and she refused to gift them the crack. Footsteps trailed, then faded, like gossip losing steam. Ethan Ward said, "Meet me in the break room 5 minutes," and his eyes promised a plan. She straightened the seam of her blazer and found her breath. The hallway light buzzed, a cheap lie trying to mimic the sun. The break room reeked of burnt coffee and afterthoughts. Maya Collins said, "If they loved the truth, they would have asked first," and steam ghosted the lid. Ethan Ward said, "You emailed audit at 6:12 a.m. That trail saves you." She recalled the cursor blinking like a metronome for courage. Ethan Ward said, "Print the diff, show checksum, force a review on record." The microwave ticked a dull countdown she refused to obey. Maya Collins said, "They used my silence as a shape for blame." He slid a flash drive like a chess move. Ethan Ward said, "Quiet is not surrender, it is aim." She tasted calm, bitter and clean as black coffee. The clock nudged forward, daring her to arrive late to fear. Paul waited behind a fern that had seen too much. Maya Collins said, "I'm here to place my statement on record," and set the cup aside. Lydia Brooks said, "Interim leave protects the process," while her smile never reached her eyes. The letter crisped between fingers like a theater prop. Maya Collins said, "My audit email predates the change by hours." The clock on the wall performed its little tyranny. Lydia Brooks said, "Security will escort you during the review," and the word escort scraped. Ethan Ward said, "Chain of custody matters, keep copies," and slid a printed diff forward. Maya Collins said, "I will walk, not crawl." The fern trembled as the vent coughed. Outside, the morning had sharpened into a thin blade. Maya Collins said, "They can take the badge, not the ground beneath my feet," and the wind clipped her words. Ethan Ward said, "I will push the ticket and CC legal," and resolve clicked like a switch. Cars hissed along the curb as if the city approved. Maya Collins said, "I am not what they named me," and the phrase settled like armor. The building glass threw her reflection back twice, neither of them afraid. Ethan Ward said, "Meet me at noon with everything you have." And the plan felt solid. She tucked the letter into the tote and straightened. The day did not soften for her, so she grew harder than the day. The cafeteria buzzed with trivial laughter that felt like static around Maya. She carried her tray like a shield, eyes on the corner table where judgment sat invisible. Maya Collins said, "Food tastes like cardboard when trust is poisoned." Ethan Ward leaned in, his voice cutting the hum. Ethan Ward said, "They forget storms make steel, not ash." She watched crumbs scatter, the smallest rebellion against neatness. Maya Collins said, "I want to vanish, but silence never saved me." His brow lifted with knowing weight. Ethan Ward said, Then you stand louder. Her chest thudded in rhythm with clinking spoons. She did not eat. She rehearsed strength bite by bite, even as the world waited for her to break. Maya's phone buzzed again with another thread of whispers disguised as notices. She wanted to hurl it, but dignity chained her hand. Maya Collins said, "They write like cowards, never to my face." Ethan Ward said, "Cowards need shadows, not truth." Clock on the wall ticked louder than her pulse. Her reflection in the glass door looked older than yesterday. Maya Collins said, "Every year I stayed quiet built this trap." He nodded, eyes sharp. Ethan Ward said, "Then tear it down piece by piece." Her throat tightened, but her spine remembered it was bone, not paper. By the stairwell, voices floated like knives, colleagues not careful enough with their cruelty. Maya Collins said, "They slice me with whispers sharper than open words." Ethan Ward said, "Let them. Shadows can't carry weight in daylight." She stepped closer to the railing, gripping steel that felt colder than any truth. Maya Collins said, "I am tired of carrying doubt like a backpack of bricks." His gaze steadied her grip. Ethan Ward said, "Drop it, or it will bury you." She inhaled, the air stale but filling her lungs with resolve. The rooftop gave her space, though the city roared below like an indifferent beast. Maya Collins said, "Out here, no one asks me to shrink." The wind tugged her blazer as though daring her to fall. Ethan Ward said, "Strength isn't in falling, it's in standing when you could." She looked out across towers that seemed both prison and promise. Maya Collins said, "I've lived as an outline, invisible unless blamed." His hand tapped the rail gently. Ethan Ward said, "Now you draw yourself in ink, not pencil." The skyline didn't bend, but she felt less alone. She returned to her desk, the cubicle a box of stale air and pitying stares. Maya Collins said, "This seat is both cage and battlefield." The monitor glowed with unanswered emails, each one accusing by silence. Ethan Ward said, "Finish the log pull. Paper saves lives in this game." Her fingers hovered, then struck keys with deliberate weight. Maya Collins said, "Every line proves I was more than their scapegoat." The cursor blinked like defiance. He watched, arms folded, but his presence steadied her storm. Maya Collins said, "If I fall, I'll fall fighting." The keystrokes sounded like war drums. The meeting room smelled of toner and suspicion. Maya Collins said, "They stacked the agenda to corner me." Papers sat like evidence awaiting trial. Lydia Brooks said, "Transparency requires cooperation," her voice coated in frost. Maya's pulse pounded, a metronome of dread. Ethan Ward said, "Logs don't lie," and they already show her work was correction, not concealment. Maya Collins said, "I corrected corruption, not caused it." Silence pressed hard, broken only by clicking pens. Tom Reyes shifted at the door, like judgment dressed in uniform. Maya knew the room wanted a collapse, but she refused to bow. The printer jammed like fate mocking her effort. Maya Collins said, "Even machines resist me today." She tugged the tray, smudging ink across her palm. Ethan Ward said, "Good, you'll wear proof of work, not guilt." She stared at her hands, blackened yet honest. Maya Collins said, "They will twist anything into a weapon." His brow rose, steady and challenging. Ethan Ward said, "Then let the weapon be in your grip, not theirs." The paper finally slid free, creased but intact. She smoothed it with care, as if flattening her own resolve. By the elevator, whispers trailed her like shadows. Maya Collins said, "Every silence feels heavier than words now." A colleague avoided her eyes, retreating quickly. Ethan Ward said, "They hide from the mirror you hold up." She pressed the button, red light glaring back. Maya Collins said, "I feel like a ghost walking among the living." He shifted beside her, hands in pockets. Ethan Ward said, "Ghosts don't haunt forever. One day, they rise." The elevator dinged. doors sliding open like reluctant truth. She stepped in, spine unbent, daring the world to watch. The record's archives smelled of dust and defiance. Maya Collins said, "Here lies truth, buried until summoned." She pulled files heavy with forgotten weight. Ethan Ward said, "Every line you touch drags light into dark corners." Her hands trembled, but did not stop flipping pages. Maya Collins said, "Proof feels heavier than guilt." He steadied the stack with one firm hand. Ethan Ward said, "Because proof carries futures, not just excuses." The fluorescent buzz rattled above, yet the silence between them felt louder. She locked eyes with him, realizing resistance was now their only path. The break room clock ticked louder than conversation. Maya Collins said, "They watch me as though guilt drips off my skin." She sat rigid, coffee untouched. Ethan Ward said, "Let them choke on their silence. Your fight is bigger than their stares." She looked at the window, city smudged by grime. Maya Collins said, "I wanted a place to belong, not a war to survive." He tapped the table, calm as a drumbeat. Ethan Ward said, "Survival is belonging. You exist louder because they tried to erase you." The clock chimed, each second a nail hammered into her resolve. The boardroom air carried the weight of stone. Maya Collins said, "You called me here to bury me, not to listen." Papers shuffled like dry leaves, sharp and meaningless. Lydia Brooks said, "We demand accountability, nothing less." Maya's eyes narrowed, her heart clawing against silence. Ethan Ward said, "Accountability requires context, and context is not treason." The projector hummed, throwing charts like accusations onto the wall. Maya Collins said, "I did not create the cracks. I revealed them." The sentence landed heavy, like steel across marble. Tom Reyes shifted near the door, hand brushing his badge, while the room pulsed with unspoken verdicts. The office corridor swelled with murmurs after the meeting. "How?" Maya Collins said, "They want me to choke on their silence more than their words." Colleagues glanced sideways, pretending to be busy. Ethan Ward said, "Let them. Their stares carry no truth, only fear." Her shoes echoed louder than the whispers, each step like a drumbeat of survival. Maya Collins said, "I carry their judgment like chains on my ankles." His head tilted, eyes burning steady. Ethan Ward said, "Chains rust, but steel remains steel." She inhaled, lungs aching with defiance, and walked on. In the restroom mirror, Maya's reflection fractured under fluorescent glare. Maya Collins said, "I don't recognize this face anymore." Her hand pressed against the glass, skin cool against surface. Ethan Ward, lingering at the door, said, "You see battle scars, I see survival marks." She traced under her eye, faint circles betraying restless nights. Maya Collins said, "I wanted strength to be quiet, not a spectacle." His voice softened, sharp edges stripped away. Ethan Ward said, "Quiet strength still shakes walls. You are shaking theirs." She stared harder until her reflection stared back unafraid. Farewell became her confessional booth. Maya Collins said, "If I speak louder, they will sharpen knives faster." She gripped the railing as footsteps echoed below. Ethan Ward said, "Then sharpen yours too. This isn't surrender, it's war." The concrete walls carried every sound, magnifying her heartbeat. Maya Collins said, "I have never been trained for war." His voice struck like an anvil. Ethan Ward said, "Neither were they trained for your resilience." She looked upward, light breaking faintly through the stairwell window, a fragile promise against the gray. At her desk, the inbox bled with accusations disguised as requests. Maya Collins said, "Every message feels like a dagger with no signature." Her fingers hovered, trembling before steadying. Ethan Ward said, "Turn their daggers into receipts. Documentation is your armor." The cursor blinked, daring her to falter. Maya Collins said, "I want to scream, but they only hear silence." His tone was firm, not cruel. Ethan Ward said, "Scream through the record. Silence is their weapon, not yours." She typed, keystrokes loud as thunder, building a shield of words against the storm. The conference table glowed under sterile light, but the truth finally clawed its way out. Maya Collins said, "Check the timestamp, my correction predates the breach." Gasps rippled through the room like falling dominoes. Lydia Brooks said, "That isn't possible. The report shows otherwise." Maya's hand slammed the folder down, paper edges slicing the air. Ethan Ward said, "The logs don't bend to politics. They tell what was done, not what's convenient." Silence thickened, jaws tight with disbelief. Maya Collins said, "You built this noose, but it hangs on your own lies now." The room could no longer deny her. The document spread across the desk like a battlefield. Maya Collins said, "Audit trails don't lie, people do." Her voice cracked but didn't waver. Lydia Brooks said, This changes the review entirely." Ethan Ward said, "It doesn't change her work, only your perception of it." Maya inhaled, lungs on fire but alive. Maya Collins said, "I will not accept silence as punishment anymore." The table glared back with reflections of every face, guilty and awed. The chain of blame had fractured, and for once it wasn't wrapped around her neck. The hallway vibrated with restless whispers after the reveal. Maya Collins said, "They saw me bleed, now they'll see me stand." Her stride cut through the murmurs like a blade. Ethan Ward said, "Reputation is smoke, truth is fire. They'll choke on both." Colleagues stepped aside, eyes wide, no longer sure of their verdict. Maya Collins said, "For the first time, I feel the weight shifting." Her shoulders, once hunched, carried steel. Ethan Ward said, "You carried their doubt long enough. Now carry your own proof." The building itself seemed to breathe heavier, as if it had been holding this secret too. The rooftop wind ripped across her face, tearing doubts with it. Maya Collins said, "I thought I was breaking, but I was only being sharpened." The city sprawled beneath her, vast and unflinching. Ethan Ward said, "Steel never fears the hammer." She leaned into the rail, the skyline a crown of jagged steel and glass. Maya Collins said, "They wrote me as weak, but I rewrote myself in fire." His eyes flickered with pride he didn't voice. Ethan Ward said, "Let them read it and burn." The air carried her defiance farther than any rumor could. Back at her desk, the inbox no longer mocked her. It trembled under her keystrokes. Maya Collins said, "I will not shrink again, not for their comfort, not for their lies." The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat aligned with hers. Ethan Ward said, "Make every word permanent, make every step undeniable." Her reply email built like a fortress, brick by brick. Maya Collins said, "This is not defense, it's declaration." Each sentence cut clean, her story now written by her own hands. The office hum softened, the war drum shifting into anthem. The boardroom was a battlefield waiting for fire. Maya Collins said, "I will not be erased, not by rumor, not by fear." Her voice cut through the stale hum of machines. Lydia Brooks said, "Your name is still tied to the breach." Ethan Ward said, "And her evidence unties it." Maya's hands shook, but not from fear, only fury ready to sharpen. Tom Reyes shifted by the door, waiting for orders that never came. Maya Collins said, "This moment decides whether truth survives or drowns." Every face turned toward her as the silence stretched like wire pulled tight. The folder slammed open, spilling timestamps like a flood. Maya Collins said, "This is not defense. It is fact." Lydia Brooks whispered, shaken, "It's impossible. The logs contradict our file." Ethan Ward said, "Truth doesn't bend, your report did." The clock ticked mercilessly as the board muttered. Maya Collins said, "You wanted me to bow, but I brought receipts." Her chest rose high, breath anchoring defiance. Every chart on the table became a weapon turned against her accusers. The silence broke with gasps, and the weight shifted onto those who had written her off. The hallway outside buzzed like a hive ruptured. Maya Collins said, They saw me bleed, now they'll watch me stand. Ethan Ward said, they thought you were weak because you were quiet. She walked forward, every step heavy with defiance. Maya Collins said, quiet was never weakness, it was waiting. Colleagues' eyes followed, shame mixed with awe. Ethan Ward said, now you walk louder than their noise. The elevator door opened, but she chose the stairs, spine aligned with fire. Whispers trailed like smoke behind her, powerless against the blaze she carried. The rooftop wind clawed at her blazer, tearing loose strands of hair into flight. Maya Collins said, I thought I was breaking, but I was only being reforged. The city stretched below, merciless yet magnificent. Ethan Ward said steel screams under the hammer, but it never shatters. Her hands gripped the rail, knuckles white but unyielding. Maya Collins said, I will not let their story be the final draft of me. His voice steadied her. Ethan Ward said, then write it louder. The skyline didn't soften, but she finally felt taller against it. Her desk no longer looked like a cage, it looked like command. Maya Collins said, I survived their lies, now I rise with proof. The monitor blinked with unfinished reports. Ethan Ward said, finish it, let the record speak louder than rumor. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, each keystroke thunder. Maya Collins said, this is not apology. It is declaration. Emails fired, attachments locked with her trail of evidence. The office hummed with quiet awe. Ethan Ward said, this is your voice etched in steel. She exhaled, the weight sliding off, replaced by fire. The boardroom no longer felt like a place of trial. It felt like the final arena. The walls that once closed in now stood witness to the weight of truth. Maya Collins said, you tried to silence me with doubt, but doubt has no teeth when faced with evidence. Her voice carried steady, unshaken, and the fluorescent lights hummed like a chorus behind her words. Lydia Brooks pressed her lips thin, her posture faltering as if the ground shifted beneath her. Lydia Brooks said, the logs, they undo everything we assumed. Papers, once weapons, now lay harmless, stripped of their false authority. Ethan Ward said, truth is not fragile, lies are. They break when confronted. Maya Collins said, you wanted me erased, but here I stand, louder than your erasure. The silence that followed wasn't hostile anymore. It was stunned, weighted with recognition. The corridor stretched long and gleaming, no longer a tunnel of whispers, but a march of ownership. Colleagues lined the walls, eyes following her like spectators at a coronation. Maya Collins said, every step I take from here belongs only to me. She did not shrink, she did not hesitate. Her heels clicked against the tiles like drum beats, announcing victory. Ethan Ward said, they finally see the truth, and now they see you. The whispers had changed. They no longer dripped with suspicion but buzzed with awe. Maya Collins said, I was once a ghost here, unseen unless accused. Now I walk as storm and fire. The corridor that once mocked her silence now amplified her presence. Ethan Ward said, you do not just belong here, you define what belonging looks like. The faces turned, not in judgment, but in recognition of power. The rooftop once mocked her with emptiness, but tonight it crowned her in twilight fire. Maya Collins said, the skyline isn't a prison of glass and steel, it's a crown I choose to wear. Her voice rose against the wind, carrying across rooftops. Ethan Ward said, you didn't just endure, you remade yourself in the fire they set. She leaned forward, hands on the cold railing, the city alive beneath her, each light a reminder that she was not small. Maya Collins said, every scar I carry is proof I was never weak. I was forged for this. The sunset bled violet and orange across the towers, fire painting every reflection. Ethan Ward said, scars don't mark you lesser, they mark you permanent. She stood taller, and for the first time, the skyline bowed to her. The desk where she had been bent under judgment now became her throne. Maya Collins said, this place will no longer be their battlefield. It is my ground, my proof. Her monitor glowed, casting steel blue across her determined face. Ethan Ward said, "Every word you write now will outlive their noise." She typed with precision, every keystroke a hammer forging permanence. The cursor blinked, no longer mocking but marching in step with her will. Maya Collins said, "I will not let their script define me. I will write my own." The final report, armed with truth, stacked like armor in her outbox. Ethan Ward said, "This is not just your defense. This is your declaration." She pressed send, and in that instant, silence bowed to her voice. The night air wrapped her like armor as she stepped out of the building for the last time that day. The street glistened with neon reflected on wet pavement, alive with color and noise. Maya Collins said, "They wrote me small, but I live larger than their ink could contain." Her tote swung against her side, weighted with proof but lighter than it had ever felt. Ethan Ward said, "This is only the first victory. There will be more." She smiled, not of relief, but of defiance carried into the dark. Maya Collins said, "I am not their silence. I am the storm that will not fade." Her footsteps rang across the sidewalk, strong and even. The city swallowed her silhouette, but her fire remained, an unshakable mark on the world that once tried to erase her.